Jake's home was gone, flattened to a graveyard of splinters while he was sweating it out in Kandahar. The email from his neighbor, subject line, "You need to see this," hit harder than any IED. Karen, the HOA president with a smile like a shark, had orchestrated it all. Deployed for 9 months, Jake had trusted his community to honor his sacrifice. Instead, they'd razed his life to the ground over unpaid dues he never knew existed. The photo attached showed his house, a modest 2-bedroom he'd poured his savings into, reduced to rubble, with Karen's pristine SUV parked triumphantly nearby. He could still hear her nasally voice from the last HOA meeting he'd attended, preaching about community standards, while eyeing his unmowed lawn like it was a personal affront. Back stateside, Jake stood on what used to be his porch, now just cracked concrete and twisted rebar. The air smelled of dust and betrayal. Karen strutted over, clipboard in hand, her heels clicking on the shattered remains of his life. "You violated Section 3.2.1 of the bylaws, Jake," she said, not even looking up. "Non-payment of dues for 6 months. We had no choice." No choice. He'd been dodging mortars while she played suburban dictator. His fists clenched, but he held back. He'd seen enough destruction overseas, he wasn't about to add to it here. Not yet. The neighborhood watched from their manicured lawns, silent as cowards. Jake's buddy, Mike, a fellow vet, was the only one who stepped forward. "Karen, you knew he was deployed," Mike growled. "You sent those notices to an empty house." Karen's eyes narrowed, but her smile didn't waver. "Rules are rules, Michael. If we make exceptions, the whole community suffers." Jake's blood boiled. His house wasn't just a building, it was his anchor, his proof of a life beyond the battlefield. And she'd turned it into a power trip. The tension snapped when Karen waved a hand at the bulldozer idling nearby, its driver leaning out with a smirk. "You're lucky we didn't fine you for the cleanup," she said. Jake's vision blurred red. He stepped closer, voice low. "You think this is a game? I was fighting for this country while you played queen." Karen didn't flinch. "Maybe if you prioritized your responsibilities, we wouldn't be here." That was it. The crowd gasped as Jake grabbed the clipboard and snapped it over his knee. Karen's face twisted, but before she could speak, Mike pulled Jake back. "Not like this, man," he whispered. "We'll hit her where it hurts." The plan came together fast. Karen's pride and joy was the HOA Clubhouse, a gaudy monument to her ego, complete with chandeliers and a fountain she'd bullied the neighborhood into funding. Jake and Mike didn't need much, a few calls, some old Air Force connections, and a favor from a buddy in civil engineering. The Air Force base nearby was expanding, and they needed land. The clubhouse sat on a plot that, with the right paperwork, could be reclassified as federal property. Jake's unit had taught him one thing: precision wins wars. They dug into the HOA's records, found Karen's shady bookkeeping, and tipped off the base commander. By week's end, the paperwork was filed. The clubhouse was doomed. The day the demolition crew rolled in, Jake stood across the street, arms crossed, watching Karen's empire crumble. The bulldozers roared, tearing through the clubhouse walls like paper. Chandeliers crashed, the fountain split, and Karen's screams echoed louder than the machinery. "This is illegal," she shrieked, waving her phone like a weapon. The crew chief, a grizzled vet who'd served with Jake, just shrugged. "Eminent domain, ma'am. Take it up with Uncle Sam." The neighbors, once silent, now whispered among themselves. Some even cheered quietly. Karen's reign had alienated more than just Jake. But victory felt hollow. Jake walked through the wreckage of his own home later that night, kicking at a broken picture frame. Inside was a photo of him and his late wife, Sarah, laughing on their first day in the house. He'd fought for this place for her, for the life they'd planned. Now it was gone, and no amount of revenge could bring it back. Mike found him there, sitting on the cracked foundation. "We got her, man," Mike said, clapping his shoulder. Jake nodded, but his eyes stayed on the photo. Yeah, but at what cost? The neighborhood tried to move on. Karen resigned in disgrace, her SUV no longer parked like a trophy. The HOA dissolved, replaced by a loose council of residents who vowed never to let one person hold that much power again. Jake got a settlement from the Air Force for the clubhouse land, enough to start over somewhere new. But as he packed the last of his things, he couldn't shake the weight of it all. He'd won the battle, but the war had cost him his home, his trust, and a piece of his soul. He drove out of the neighborhood at dawn, the photo of Sarah tucked into his duffel bag. The bulldozed lot faded in his rearview mirror, along with the ghosts of what could have been. Karen's downfall was justice, but it didn't rebuild his house. It didn't bring Sarah back. It didn't erase the betrayal of a community that stood by while his life was torn apart. As the highway stretched ahead, Jake vowed one thing: wherever he landed next, he'd never let anyone bulldoze his life again. Jake's truck rumbled down the highway, the photo of Sarah his only passenger. He settled in a small town an hour away, a place with no HOAs, just quiet folks who nodded when he passed. The settlement money bought a fixer-upper cabin, modest but sturdy, with a view of rolling hills. He spent his days hammering nails and sanding floors, each swing a way to bury the anger. But at night, the silence screamed. He'd see Karen's smug face, hear the bulldozers roar, and feel the sting of neighbors who'd watched his life collapse without a word. Word of Karen's downfall spread. A local news outlet picked up the story, painting Jake as the vet who fought back against a tyrant. Letters arrived, some from strangers, others from old neighbors. Most apologized, admitting they'd been too scared to challenge Karen's reign. One letter, in shaky handwriting, was from Mrs. Ellis, the widow across the street. "I should have spoken up," she wrote. "I saw her plan it all and stayed quiet. Forgive me." Jake read it twice, then tossed it in a drawer. Forgiveness felt like a luxury he couldn't afford. He started volunteering at the local VFW, helping other vets navigate benefits and bureaucracy. It gave him purpose, a way to rebuild what Karen's bulldozer couldn't touch: his sense of duty. One evening, a young vet named Tara shared her story. Her landlord had evicted her while she was deployed, claiming lease violations. Jake's jaw tightened. It was Karen's playbook, just a different face. He helped Tara file a complaint, and they won her a small settlement. It wasn't justice, but it was a start. Months later, Jake got a call from Mike. Karen was back, trying to sue the Air Force for the clubhouse demolition. She'd hired a slick lawyer, claiming emotional distress. Jake laughed bitterly. Emotional distress. She'd written the book on it. He and Mike dug up more dirt, emails showing Karen had pocketed HOA funds for clubhouse upgrades that never happened. They sent the evidence to the base's legal team. Karen's case collapsed faster than her precious fountain. She left town, her name a cautionary tale. Jake's cabin became a home, slowly. He hung Sarah's photo above the fireplace, its cracked frame a reminder of what he'd lost and what he'd survived. The neighbors here were different, they brought casseroles, not clipboards. But Jake never fully trusted again. He'd learned that communities could turn as fast as a desert storm. One spring morning, he planted a garden out front, simple flowers that Sarah would have loved. As he worked, a neighbor kid asked about the scar on his arm, a shrapnel wound from Kandahar. Jake told the story, not sugarcoating it. The kid listened, wide-eyed, then ran off to tell his friends. Jake smiled. Maybe that was enough, to share the truth, to keep fighting, to plant something new.